Sir, I need you to step aside for additional screening. Come with me, please.
I just came through the scanner, nothing flagged. Can you tell me specifically why I'm being selected?
It's a random selection, standard protocol. I need you to come with me now, sir.
Am I being detained or am I free to go?
Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport was running at full capacity when it happened. Friday afternoon, 2:14 p.m. The kind of controlled chaos that defines the world's busiest airport. Announcement boards cycling through departures, TSA lines snaking through retractable belt barriers, the particular energy of a Friday travel rush where every person moving through that terminal has somewhere important to be. Marcus Cole Jr. had somewhere important to be too. 16 years old, wearing a clean navy blazer over a white shirt, dark jeans, fresh sneakers, a carry-on roller bag in his right hand, a leather messenger bag over his left shoulder. He was traveling alone for the first time, flying from Atlanta to a business leadership summit in Chicago that his father had enrolled him in 6 months earlier. His ticket was first class. His gate was B14. His departure was in 47 minutes. He never made it to the gate. The Terminal B security checkpoint camera mounted above the TSA screening lanes captured everything at 2:14 p.m. With the particular clarity of federal aviation security infrastructure, high definition, time-stamped, covering every angle of the screening area simultaneously. Marcus moved through the general screening line, placed his bags on the conveyor belt, walked through the body scanner without incident. No alarm, no flag, no issue. He collected his belongings on the other side, repacked his messenger bag, and extended the handle of his roller bag. That was when Security Supervisor Dale Crawford approached. Crawford was a 12-year TSA veteran at Hartsfield-Jackson, a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s who carried his authority the way some people carry a grudge, forward and heavy. He had processed thousands of passengers through this checkpoint. He would later claim in deposition that something about Marcus seemed inconsistent with his ticket class. He would be asked under oath to explain what that meant. He would struggle to answer in a way that did not confirm what the cameras had already recorded. What the cameras recorded was simple. Marcus Cole Jr. was the only teenager traveling alone at that checkpoint. He was also the only black passenger in the first-class ticket lane when Crawford made his approach. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, you need to hit that subscribe button. Stories like this one don't get told unless we tell them. And your support means these videos reach the people who need to see what is really happening out here. Crawford stepped directly in front of Marcus, badge prominent, posture closing off forward movement. His body camera was active and recording. "Son, I need you to come with me for additional screening." Marcus stopped. He had flown twice before, both times with his father, and he had been through enough of his father's business conversations to recognize the particular tone of someone who had already made a decision and was using procedural language to dress it up. "I already went through screening," Marcus said, his voice steady, the way his father had taught him to speak when speaking mattered. "I went through the scanner. Nothing flagged." "This is a secondary screening," Crawford replied. "Standard procedure. Come with me." "Can you tell me why?" Marcus asked. "Is there something specific that flagged?" Crawford's chin lifted slightly. "It's a random selection. Protocol. I need you to come with me now." The checkpoint camera captured the exchange from above. It also captured what Crawford's body camera captured from his chest. Marcus's first-class boarding pass, clearly visible in his hand. The name on it, Marcus A. Cole Jr. The ticket class, first. The airline, Atlas Air Consolidated. The gate, B14. Atlas Air Consolidated was not a common carrier. It was a private and charter aviation company operating out of a dedicated terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson, servicing corporate clients, government contracts, and private individuals across the southeastern United States. It had been founded 14 years earlier by Marcus A. Cole Sr., who had built it from a single lease Citation jet into a fleet of 23 aircraft generating $41 million in annual revenue. Marcus Cole Sr. was currently in a board meeting in the Atlas Air Consolidated Executive Suite located in Terminal B, 300 meters from where his son was being detained. Marcus Jr. did not know his father was that close. Crawford did not know whose son he was stopping. The camera knew everything. The secondary screening room was a standard TSA holding space. Fluorescent lighting, gray walls, a metal table, 2 chairs, a wall-mounted camera that Crawford did not acknowledge but that was recording in full high definition. Crawford directed Marcus to sit. A second officer, Agent Renee Paulson, entered behind them and positioned herself near the door. "I want to call my dad," Marcus said, setting his bags on the table. "You can make a call after we complete screening," Crawford replied. "Am I being detained?" Marcus asked. Crawford paused. "You're being held for secondary screening." "That's not what I asked," Marcus said. "Am I being detained or am I free to go?" The wall camera captured Crawford's expression shifting. The slight recalibration of a man who had not expected the question to come out of a 16-year-old with this kind of precision. "You are being held for screening purposes. Please sit down." Marcus sat, but he did not put his phone away. Crawford reached for it. "I need you to put that away." "I'm a minor traveling alone," Marcus said, not releasing the phone. "I have the right to contact a parent or guardian. That's not a request. That's a legal right." Paulson shifted her weight near the door. Her body camera captured her looking at Crawford briefly, then away. Crawford's hand remained extended. "Put the phone on the table." Marcus placed the phone on the table face up, screen active. He had already sent a text. 3 words. Terminal B security. Should airport security be permitted to pull passengers from lines for additional screening without articulating any specific reason? Comment below. Because what happened to Marcus Cole Jr. that Friday afternoon was not random selection. And the only thing random about it was that the security supervisor had no idea whose son he had just detained. Crawford began his secondary screening process. He went through Marcus's carry-on methodically: clothing, toiletries, a laptop, a leather notebook embossed with the Atlas Air Consolidated logo, business cards from his father's company tucked into the front pocket. Crawford examined the notebook briefly and set it aside. He did not comment on the logo. He examined the boarding pass again. "This ticket is for the Atlas private terminal," Crawford said. "How did you come to have this ticket?" Marcus looked at him evenly. "My father booked it for me." "And who is your father?" "Marcus A. Cole, Sr." Crawford's expression did not change. "And what does your father do?" Marcus held Crawford's gaze. "He owns the airline." The wall camera captured the silence that followed. For seconds, Crawford looking at the boarding pass, looking at Marcus, looking at the Atlas Air Consolidated logo on the leather notebook still sitting on the table between them, looking back at the boarding pass. He did not verify it. He did not call the Atlas Air desk 300 meters away. He did not ask Marcus for a second form of identification that would have confirmed the name match in under 60 seconds. He picked up his radio instead. "I've got a minor in secondary B checkpoint, possible fraudulent travel document. Need a supervisor to verify." Marcus's jaw tightened. "That is not a fraudulent document. That is a legitimate first-class ticket issued by Atlas Air Consolidated to a passenger whose father owns the company. You can verify that by calling the Atlas desk right now." Crawford did not call the Atlas desk. He set the radio down and looked at Marcus with the particular patience of someone who had decided the situation was under control. "We'll get this sorted out. Just sit tight." Marcus sat tight for 4 minutes. Then the door opened. Marcus A. Cole Sr. did not enter the room quietly. He was 51 years old, 6'2", wearing a charcoal suit that had been tailored in London, and he had crossed 300 meters of Terminal B in under 4 minutes after reading his son's text message. Behind him was his executive assistant, his personal attorney, who had been in the board meeting with him, and the director of operations for Atlas Air Consolidated, all 3 moving at the same pace, all 3 with the collective energy of people who understood exactly what had happened and exactly what it meant. The wall camera captured Cole Sr. stopping in the doorway of the secondary screening room. His eyes went to his son first, checking him, reading him, confirming he was physically unharmed. Then his eyes went to Crawford. "I am Marcus Cole. I am the owner of Atlas Air Consolidated. That is my son. That is a legitimate ticket issued by my company. He is traveling to Chicago for a business summit that begins in 3 hours. What is the specific reason he has been detained? Crawford straightened. Sir, we received a report of a possible. What report? Cole Sr.'s attorney stepped forward, already recording on his phone. What specific report? Who filed it? What was the basis? Crawford's radio crackled. His supervisor's voice came through asking for a status update. Cole Sr. did not wait for Crawford to answer the radio. He looked at his son. Marcus, get your bags. Sir, Crawford started. You need to speak with my attorney, Cole Sr. said, his voice dropping to the register of someone who was no longer making requests. And then you need to speak with your supervisor. And then your supervisor needs to speak with the TSA Federal Security Director for this airport, because what you have done here today has a name and it is documented on 4 cameras and it will have consequences. Marcus made his flight. Wheels up at 3:47 p.m., 1 hour and 33 minutes after he had been pulled from the screening line. He arrived at the Chicago Leadership Summit with 40 minutes to spare. He sat in the front row. He took notes in the leather notebook with the Atlas Air Consolidated logo that Crawford had examined and set aside without understanding what he was looking at. He did not tell anyone at the summit what had happened. He did not need to. He already knew what it meant. His father had made sure he understood, not out of bitterness but out of preparation, that being a black man in America meant that credentials were never enough on their own. That the blazer, the first-class ticket, the company name on the notebook, none of it was armor. None of it was guarantee. None of it meant that someone with a badge would not look at him and see a problem before they saw a person. He had just learned it in 4 walls with fluorescent lighting and a camera that recorded everything. The attorney Cole Sr. Retained was Diane Washington, a civil rights litigator based in Atlanta with 19 years of experience in federal civil rights law and a record of cases against federal agencies that had been cited in 311th Circuit decisions. When Washington reviewed the footage, the checkpoint camera, Crawford's body camera, Paulson's body camera, and the secondary screening room wall camera, she used one phrase to describe what she saw. Textbook pretextual stop with zero articulable basis. The complaint filed in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia was precise and exhaustive. Marcus A. Cole Jr., a minor, by and through his father and legal guardian Marcus A. Cole Sr., versus the Transportation Security Administration, Dale Crawford and Renee Paulson. The allegations included unlawful detention of a minor without reasonable suspicion, racial profiling and selective enforcement, violation of Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable seizure, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligent supervision by TSA management. The evidence attached to the complaint ran to 287 pages. Every second of the 31-minute detention documented across 4 camera angles. Audio capturing Marcus's repeated, precise assertions of his rights. Crawford's failure to articulate any specific basis for the stop. Crawford's description of Marcus's legitimate ticket as a possible fraudulent travel document. Crawford's refusal to call the Atlas Air Desk for a 60-second verification. The 4-second silence after Marcus identified his father as the airline's owner. All of it time-stamped, geotagged, preserved. The government's first settlement offer arrived 8 weeks after filing. $100,000. Washington's response was a single paragraph. Your officer detained a 16-year-old boy traveling on a legitimate first-class ticket and described that ticket as a possible fraudulent document without any basis for that characterization. In a room with 4 cameras running, after the boy correctly identified his rights, correctly identified his father, and correctly identified the company whose logo was sitting on the table between them. $100,000 is not a settlement figure. It is a statement about how much you believe this child's constitutional rights are worth. We disagree with that figure fundamentally. We will see you at trial. They came back with $500,000. Still deeply insufficient, Washington replied, and filed her expert witness disclosures the same afternoon. The trial opened 19 months after the Terminal B detention. The federal courtroom in Atlanta was full every single day. Civil rights organizations occupied the gallery. Aviation industry professionals attended as observers. National media covered it as exactly what it was. a case that asked a federal jury to decide what the Fourth Amendment means for a black teenager in an airport, whether a badge gives anyone the authority to detain a child without reason, and whether the most documented moment in any federal building, a moment recorded on 4 simultaneous cameras, could be explained away as standard procedure. The footage played on the trial's first day, all 4 angles simultaneously on a split courtroom monitor. The jury of 12 Georgians watched in silence as Marcus moved through the scanner without incident, collected his bags, extended his roller handle, and was immediately approached by Crawford. They watched the secondary screening room. They watched Marcus ask 3 precise legal questions in a row. They watched Crawford refuse to call a desk 300 meters away that would have resolved the situation in 60 seconds. They watched the 4-second silence after the airline ownership was disclosed. They watched Cole Sr. enter the room in a London-tailored suit and 3 people behind him. When the footage ended, 2 jurors were shaking their heads. One had her arms folded tightly across her chest. The foreman, a retired logistics manager named Gerald Tatum, was writing on his notepad. Marcus testified for 4 hours. He was 17 by the time the trial began, composed, precise, direct. He walked the jury through the screening process, through the secondary room, through the questions he had asked and the answers he had not received. He described learning, in those 31 minutes, something his father had tried to prepare him for but that no preparation fully covers. I did everything right, he told the jury, his voice steady. I dressed right. I had a legitimate ticket. I knew my rights. I asked the right questions. I didn't panic. I didn't raise my voice. I sent my dad a text. And none of it mattered for 31 minutes because the only thing Officer Crawford saw when he looked at me was a reason to stop. Washington called Crawford on cross-examination. The exchange lasted 40 minutes. Officer Crawford, when you approached Marcus at the checkpoint, what specific behavior had you observed that warranted secondary screening? He seemed inconsistent with his ticket class. What does that mean specifically? He appeared younger than typical first-class passengers. Are there age restrictions on first-class tickets? No. Are there appearance requirements for first-class tickets? No. Did anything flag during his scanner screening? No. Did any of his belongings flag on the conveyor belt? No. Did you observe him doing anything that suggested a security threat? No. Did you observe him doing anything that suggested his ticket was fraudulent? Crawford paused. He appeared to be traveling alone. Minors are not permitted to travel alone? They can travel alone, yes. So what was your specific articulable basis for secondary screening? Silence. Washington let it sit for 3 seconds. The jury watched Crawford's face. You described his boarding pass as a possible fraudulent travel document in your radio call. What made you believe it was fraudulent? It seemed inconsistent. The Atlas Air Consolidated logo was printed on it. The name matched his identification. The gate matched the Atlas private terminal. What was inconsistent? Silence again. Officer Crawford, the Atlas Air Consolidated desk is 300 meters from that checkpoint. A phone call to that desk would have confirmed the ticket's validity in under 60 seconds. Why didn't you make that call? Crawford looked at the table. I followed standard secondary screening protocol. Standard protocol does not prevent you from making a verification call, Washington said. You chose not to make it. Why? No answer that Crawford gave satisfied the question. No answer he gave would. The cameras had already answered it. The jury deliberated for 4 days. On the 5th morning, they returned to the courtroom. The foreman Gerald Tatum stood to read the verdict. We find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. The damages phase lasted 6 days. The jury heard from a child psychologist about the specific and lasting harm of being detained by federal authority as a minor, the particular damage of learning that credentials and conduct and compliance are not protection, the weight a black teenager carries out of a secondary screening room that he does not set down easily or quickly. They heard from Cole Sr. about watching his son walk onto that flight knowing what those 31 minutes had taught him, and knowing that no business summit, no first-class seat, no company logo on a leather notebook changes the fundamental calculus his son now carried. They heard from Washington's economic expert about reputational considerations, about the value placed on constitutional rights when federal agents violate them without consequence. When the jury returned with damages, the courtroom was silent. $2.1 million in compensatory damages for emotional distress, violation of constitutional rights, and harm to a minor in federal custody without cause. $2.1 million in punitive damages, calculated to send a message to TSA leadership that detaining children without articulable suspicion has a price that exceeds the convenience of avoiding a 60-second phone call. Total $4.2 million. Crawford was suspended without pay pending investigation and subsequently terminated. Paulson received a formal reprimand and mandatory retraining. The TSA Federal Security Director for Hartsfield-Jackson issued an internal review order covering secondary screening selection protocols at all Terminal B checkpoints. The agency's public statement described the resulting policy changes as part of ongoing commitment to fair and consistent security operations. It did not name Marcus Cole Jr. It did not acknowledge what the cameras had recorded. It did not use the word profiling once. Marcus used a portion of the settlement, managed in trust until his 18th birthday, to establish the Cole Equal Access Initiative, a legal fund providing free representation to minors subjected to discriminatory treatment in transportation and public accommodation spaces. He continued attending the Business Leadership Summit the following year. He sat in the front row again. He still takes notes in a leather notebook with the Atlas Air Consolidated logo. The 4 cameras at Terminal B still record everything in high definition. The checkpoint camera, the body cameras, the secondary screening room wall mount. They record thousands of passengers every hour. Families, business travelers, students, elderly couples, teenagers flying alone for the first time. They record every approach, every stop, every secondary screening. They record what happens and they record why. Sometimes the most important camera in the room is the one the person doing the harm forgets is running. Because in an airport where a 16-year-old can be pulled from a screening line for the crime of traveling first class while black, the Constitution is not self-enforcing. It requires someone young enough to still be surprised by injustice, precise enough to ask the right questions, and brave enough to send a 3-word text and wait for what comes through the door. Marcus Cole Jr. was all 3. The cameras prove it. If you believe that every American, regardless of age, regardless of what they look like, regardless of whose son they are, deserves to walk through an airport without being detained without cause, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We have more stories coming that show what happens when people know their rights, hold the line, and make sure the cameras are rolling. Because justice does not always arrive on time. But when it arrives, it should cost something worth remembering.